So as a matter of fact, I know we're going to start very shortly, but I want to get a feel of who is in the house. So just respond and say, just make a few comments on the chat section before we get cracking on. I want to just give a shout out to most people. Uche Okwonu, it's good to have you here. And Baketa, it's nice to have you here. Please, if you're in the room, just say hello, say you can hear me, give a wave, give a shake, dance even if you want to, that's fine. It's good to see you, Anne. Israel Asaya from Nigeria. Uche Okwonu, it's good to see you, sir. Patricia, it's good to see you. Fantastic. Oh my, it's coming fast and quick. Nicholas Drager, it's good to see you, boss. Catherine from Lancaster University, it's good to see you. If you are in the room and you can hear me, make a wave, say something nice in the chat before we get cracking. It's going to be a good day. Alex Yeboah, it's good to see you, boss, all the way from Ghana. South Africa is here. Let's have a sense of the country. Your country, yes, there's Wanza from Zambia. Let's go. Israel, I like that. Ubong, Nairobi is here. Gloria, Doris Njoka, Ifeanyi Obekwe from Nigeria. Oh my, just Julia Silota from Mozambique. Fantastic. I mean, it's like a continental cooking pot here today. It's going to be great. Udo Ukeju, it's good to see you, sir, from Gregory University, Ruturu. Barbara Nsokolo, all the way from Zambia. Israel Asaya, Eric from Ghana. Shout out to everybody. It's going to be a good day. So I think we probably will just make a move on because I know most other folks will join us. And I think it's going to be, obviously, we are currently in the Sustainable Agriculture themed month of the Participate with Recirculate project. And don't worry, somebody will be speaking about that in more detail. But I think I just give like a foundation, an introduction into what we expect today. So a few house rules. So if you're not speaking, try and keep your microphone at mute as much as possible, except you have to say something. And as the webinar progresses, I'd like us to note the fact that be open and free to drop comments and drop feedback and even questions to any of our speakers in the chat section. One of our team members would pick up the questions, and at the end of the webinar or at the end of their talk, it will be directed to the individual to respond to them. So don't feel under pressure. You have to wait for the end of the talk. If there's something that's occurring to you or something that you want to kind of express, try and note it, either a question or a feedback in the chat section. That's absolutely important. Also, we hope to have different speakers today covering different things. And the way we've designed this is to make it as interactive as possible. So be on the alert because there'll be a series of activities for us to respond to as it progresses. So thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, Abraham. More folks are joining us. Fantastic. Now today we're talking about food. And the big question is, can Africa feed itself? You know, currently in sub-Saharan Africa, the population is approximately 1 billion people. And that is designed, in some sense, it's expected to increase between 2 to 4% every year. Now, 1 billion people is 1 billion mouths. That is a lot of mouths to feed. But ultimately, more than 40% of Africans live in extreme poverty. You see, and the issue is food is basic requirement for survival. But can Africa feed itself? Ever since the lockdown began, I have a little kind of small greenhouse where I kind of grow a few vegetables, some corn, sweet corn, some tomatoes, and so on. And I remember I also have a small, nice grape tree. And I remember going to go and harvest my grapes just before things went down. And I discovered that, wait a minute, do people actually know where their food comes from? What is the process that gets your food to you? If I ask, well, what did you have for breakfast? Do you know how your food got to you? Big questions. Is there a business in agriculture? Why do, and this is very important, why do several agricultural graduates in many African countries, after graduating, they, in some sense, never do anything agricultural? Is agriculture sexy enough? The code is sexy. It's sexy, an occupation. And interestingly, many African countries before COVID have depended heavily, and even way before then, on the extractive industry, oil, gas, minerals, for their GDP growth and economic mainstay. But in recent times, fossil fuels, with the prices of oil and gas crashing incredibly, most African governments have kind of put a diversion towards agriculture as a mainstay. But how is that going? Are the policies right? What are the issues? Are the opportunity? Has over 65% of the uncultivated arable land in the world. That is a lot of land that can be cultivated. But what are the issues around irrigation, soil nutrients, fertilizers, agricultural inputs? It's almost like a whole minefield. What about funding and all of that? And so, well, but the point is this. Ultimately, I believe Africa can feed itself. That's up for argument. That's up for discussion. Is the reason why we are here. And we have an incredible lineup of amazing speakers who are experts in their field, and they'll be addressing different dimensions of this topic. And I'm looking forward to having an amazing time. So once again, welcome everybody to this session. Let's get cracking. So as a matter of fact, I want to introduce the first speaker who will give us an introduction, because this program has been put together on the back of a UK-funded project called Recirculate. And the person I want to introduce to give an intro, his name is Professor Keksempo. Now, Professor Keksempo is a professor of environmental microbiology with over 30 years of experience in research. And his main field is in researching around organic contaminants and bioremediation. But recently, he's that kind of increased his expertise around bioenergy and the use of microorganisms for energy generation. He's a international multi-awardee with different funding from different international bodies. He's currently Dean of the International Engagement for Lancaster Environment Center. He's Assistant Dean of International for Faculty of Science and Technology. He's also the Interim Director of the Future Cities Research Institute. And on top of that, he's a very busy man, as you can tell. He is the Director of Recirculate and Actuate, which are the sponsors of this project. I have absolute pleasure to welcome Professor Keksempo to set the scene. Kek, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Akan, for that introduction, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone. It's wonderful to see so many people on this webinar. I'm going to share my screen with you because I have a very short presentation, just to set the scene, really. Akan, can you see the presentation?
Yes, please, we can. Proceed, please.
Okay, well, as Akan's already mentioned, my name's Professor Keksempo, and for my sins, I'm the lead scientist on the Recirculate and Actuate projects, but I also do a lot of work for the university in the broader international engagement arena as well. And, through that, I've had the pleasure of meeting, very many interesting people, and many of whom are on this webinar today. So welcome. And I'm going to basically give an intro to this current webinar, which is entitled International Sustainable Agriculture. And the main purpose of this is to explore the challenges and opportunities for food security in Africa and encourage knowledge exchange between African countries. But I guess the big question, which Akan has already alluded to, is can Africa feed itself? So before we talk about this, really, the projects that we've got going through Recirculate and Actuate are really couched in Lancaster's philosophy of collaboration, equitable collaboration through co-design, co-development and co-delivery. And it really seeks to bring together different sectors of society to make the best of what we have in terms of the environment, in terms of research, in terms of teaching and learning, jobs in the private sector, and of course engaging with government and policy as well. And that really is at the heart of much of what we do here at Lancaster, and is certainly embedded within these projects. So what is Recirculate? A lot of people in the room will be familiar with Recirculate. It's a £7 million project funded by the UK government under the Global Challenges Research Fund, and it brings together a number of partners in sub-Saharan Africa, in Ghana, in Nigeria, Kenya, in Malawi, Zambia, and Botswana. And it is truly an exciting project, and it seeks to drive eco-innovation in Africa by focusing on capacity building for a safe circular water economy. And it truly is a shared collaborative vision to support new partnership-based approaches to enable African researchers to grow transformational impact through working with, in, and for the communities. I guess that's the headline statement, really. And as I mentioned before, it really does bring together opportunities to work together across many different sectors, across many different disciplines. And for me, the international dimension is enormous. It's so important, but it's absolutely key that we work as an equitable partnership. And really at the heart of Recirculate and Actuate is this notion of the circular economy, the sort of reuse, recycle, repair of what we have. And for the purposes of our project, this has been broken down into this sort of rather sort of colourful cartoon where we think about how we can actually use waste in a profitable way to produce energy. So thinking about water for sanitation and health, how instead of impacting negatively on the environment and on human health, we take that, we give it a value, and from that we can produce energy in the form of biogas, which can be converted to heat and light, and of course cooling as well. But of course with any process there is waste, and that waste is so-called digestate, either as a solid or as a liquid. And of course, that can be used profitably as either a source of irrigation or indeed as an alternative fertilizer to the conventional inorganic approaches that we use, or indeed as a soil conditioner. And from that, we look to enhance food production in a sustainable way to feed society. But of course, as with everything else, agriculture produces waste as well. And of course, that feeds back into the waste management cycle, of course, that virtuous cycle. And therefore, we have this, this example of a circular economy. And really, that is the ambition within the project. So beyond that, of course, the sort of science and the technology that's driving the circular economy in these projects, we also have, other issues, wider issues engaging in society through knowledge exchange and engagement, to share what we're doing, to spread the word. And of course, this webinar and the Participate with the Recirculate series is an example of that. But of course, the thing that keeps me awake at night with regard to what we're doing here is how do we develop legacy and impact from the project after the funding has dried up? And that's where working with the business communities, entrepreneurs, innovators, we hope that we can take this to the next level and embed it and have it accepted within society so it continues beyond the project funding. Akan mentioned the Actuate project, and Actuate really is a product, something that has emerged from the Recirculate project. And to give it its long title, it's accelerating the adoption of circular sanitation demonstration systems for improved health outcomes, or Actuate, which is a lot easier to say. And really, this is a translation project. So this is taking science and technology and actually trying to apply it for real. So underpinning this will be two demonstration projects, one at a school in Accra, and the other at a university campus, the University of Benin in Nigeria. And really, by having these working demonstrators, we hope to communicate how we can use systems such as this to manage our waste, to extract everything that we possibly can from it in terms of energy, and how that feeds into sustainable agriculture, but also more widely in how we can use this to educate school students, university students, communities, how we can then look to drive this in an entrepreneurial way, as I've already talked about, to maximize economic benefit across sub-Saharan Africa. So very, very exciting. But really, I mean, that's all I want to say. I want to finish off really by introducing the dream team, truly international. We have people from the UK, but we also have people from countries in sub-Saharan Africa, of course, Ghana, Uganda, Zambia, who are going to bring their wealth of expertise and knowledge to this webinar to make it the exciting event that it will truly become. And that's all I want to say. I want to thank everyone for listening, thank everyone for attending, and I really hope you enjoy this seminar. So I'm going to hand back to Akan to continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Keksempo. That was a really good introduction, and I'm sure everybody has a sense as to what the project is about. Now, this project is got continuous engagement, which we'll be talking about shortly. And so if you are listening, you are here in the webinar listening to this, be rest assured that there are huge opportunities for engagement. I think we can proceed straight away to get into here our distinguished speakers. And I have to say, folks that have come together to give sessions on this webinar are truly distinguished. They are phenomenal in their own right, international speakers and experts. And the beauty is we've broken the webinar down into 5 main sections, and they will be covering different areas within that spread. The first person I want to introduce would cover an area that I think is fundamental if Africa is to feed itself, and is the issue and area around water. Plants cannot survive without water. Is there enough water in Africa? It's a good question. I mean, if you're a farmer, you're trying to be a farmer, do you have enough water? What is the importance of irrigation management? Now, I want to call on Professor Ian Dodd, who, as a matter of fact, is an Australian. So I noticed he keeps introducing himself, that the fact that because he's Australian, so he's used to drought. And as a matter of fact, he focuses his specialty on fundamental mechanisms by which plant root systems communicate the effect of drought and other stresses. He's currently Director of Study for the Food Security Research Learning MSc at Lancaster University, and he has published over 100 peer-reviewed international papers. He's the handling editor of a Journal of Experimental Botany and Plant and Soil. He's a member of the Plant Sector Group of the Technology Strategy Board, and is currently Deputy Director of Research on Recirculate. This man knows plant. And so I want to implore you to listen to him as he addresses the issue of water and its relevance to food production, and if Africa can feed itself. Over to you, Ian. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Akan, for the build-up. That's fantastic. I hope you can hear me adequately and you can see my screen that I've shared.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can, boss.
So I'm very pleased to be addressing so many people via this webinar. I think it's great. We've got, I think, almost 100 people on the call, which indicates
that's correct,
how important this particular topic is. So my title at the university is Professor of Sustainable Agriculture. And if you're interested in sustainability and agriculture, it's obviously inevitable that you gravitate towards Africa as a continent, given the challenges that agriculture faces within the continent. And certainly many of you on the call understand these challenges better than I do, given that you're on the ground there. I've made this webinar available for some of my students that I'm currently teaching at Lancaster, a master's course called Agriculture, Climate Change and Food Security. And I think it's important that they also understand some of the challenges that Africa face, because I think they can learn very much from the participants of this webinar. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a topic that keeps me awake at night, and that is actually ensuring that there is sufficient water to nourish the crops in Africa and indeed globally. Climate change will result in changing rainfall patterns. Already in the last 3 years in the UK, we've experienced some significant droughts that have constrained agricultural productivity. Certainly 20 years ago, this was almost very unlikely to happen within the UK. So as the climate changes, it creates stresses for our plants. So to turn to the topic of today's webinar, can Africa feed itself? I think it's a really relevant question, but in some ways, it's not the first time this question has been asked. And I'm going to go back a number of years and refer you to the prominent environmentalist Lester Brown, who founded the World Watch Institute. And he published a very influential book, Who Will Feed China? And you can see the cover of this book. I apologize, it's a bit pixelated. And I would encourage you to read this. Now, when he published this book, rightly enough, the Chinese were highly offended. Well, of course, we will be able to feed ourselves. Thank you very much for your commentary. And this, in many ways, was a controversial book. Certainly, China has had a history of feast and famine over the years. And given that it represents almost 20% of the world's population, this is a key issue for global food security. And it's an issue that's absolutely uppermost in the minds of China's political leaders. They have, I think, a really challenging task, not that dissimilar to the challenges facing Africa. So China has about 7% of the world's arable land, predominantly located in the south and east of the country, which tends to be the wetter part of the country. China has only 5% of the world's water resources, again, focused predominantly in the south and the east of the country. As you go further north and west, population density thins out because there's less water available for farmers to grow their crops to feed people. And I've had the good fortune to work in this particular area, and certainly water resources management is critical if you move into areas like the Hexi corridor in the northwest of China, where actually farmers are at the front line of trying to prevent their crops succumbing to desertification from surrounding deserts. So if you look at the maths here, 19% of the world's population, 7% of the world's arable land, 5% of the water resources, there's clearly a significant challenge that Lester Brown was aware of. And if you look at China's historical success in food production, it's been astonishing. We always focus on the economic development in terms of being a transformation, but their agricultural development has been phenomenal as well. So you can see from the 1960s, which was a time of food famine in China as a result of political reorganization, the amount of land cropped to grain has not changed. And despite that, we can see that grain yield per unit area has increased about 5-fold. And it continues to increase today as a result of huge investment by the Chinese government in agricultural research and development. In terms of the technologies that have helped deliver this transformation, we can see there has been massive increases in the use of fertilizer, irrigation, plastic film, which is placed over the surface of the soil to prevent water loss via evaporation, increased use of chemicals, and a whole range of agricultural technologies. And these days, China is almost completely self-sufficient for staples. I say almost because as the Chinese people have become more wealthy, they've wanted to eat more meat, and to feed the livestock, there has been a major drive to secure soybean meal from different parts of the world, including Africa, I think. And that's why the comment is that they're almost completely self-sufficient. They recognize that water resources are a major challenge, and there are big national programs in China actually trying to promote water-saving agricultural techniques. So I would argue that Africa needs a similar transformation. So within the Recirculate project, and I lead the work package Water for Food Production, we have a very simple hypothesis to test. And this is whether smallholder agriculture can benefit from new approaches to irrigation based on an understanding of crop biology and access to new technologies. And so via our partners, particularly CSIR in Ghana, and a couple of my colleagues will develop further themes within this webinar, we've undertaken a research program to actually look at some irrigation techniques that we believe offer promise within African agriculture. So these new approaches to irrigation, as far as I'm aware, have hardly been trialed at all in Africa. And these are two techniques known as alternate wetting and drying and partial root zone drying. And you can say that the fundamental work that was done on partial root zone drying in Lancaster led to the development of this field technique. And indeed, my supervisor, when I did my PhD at Lancaster University, developed this technique of partial root zone drying. And I've done my bit to try and popularize it and understand it from a fundamental perspective and implement it in different environments around the world, now including Africa. So the techniques are very simple. Alternate wetting and drying is applied to rice. Rice is conventionally grown within a paddy system, so the surface of the soil is flooded. So what alternate wetting and drying does is uses a really simple technology. So we can see here a perforated plastic tube, in this case, a soft drink or cola bottle inserted into the soil. And periodically the soil is allowed to dry by evaporation and also by the plant's transpiring water. And we can see here that it's possible to measure the water table height. And when the water table is allowed to drop 15 centimeters below the surface of the soil, the plants are then reflooded. And you go through these series of drying and re-wetting cycles over the course of the season. Really simple to apply. The partial root zone drying technique can easily be applied in furrow irrigation, which tends to be a relatively low technology form of irrigation that's widely applied by farmers throughout the world. So instead of irrigating every furrow, you can see here that only every second furrow is irrigated. And this saves a considerable amount of water. Now I'm going to thank my colleagues at CSIR Ghana in Kumasi for the next couple of slides. They've been doing a huge amount of work, not just in terms of the technologies of how to water, but also when to water. So there's a couple of different ways we can determine when to water our plants. So conventionally, if we're at home and we have a pot plant, we tend to ignore it. It eventually wilts and we re-water it. Probably not great as an agricultural technique, but a very basic indicator of plant-based sensing for irrigation. So measuring the water table height can be easily done as an example of soil moisture sensing, and we set up some rules to determine when the plant should be watered again. Or it's possible to get these days some really low cost soil moisture sensors to do the job for non-flooded systems. Something that really excites me is that with mobile phone technology, it's possible to buy phones these days that actually have a thermal camera on them. Now, as plants transpire and lose water to the atmosphere, it cools them down. In the same way as when we perspire and stand out in the wind, our sweat, as it evaporates from our skin, will cool us down. So it's possible to image a plant thermally and determine whether it's suffering from water stress or not. And you can see one of my colleagues in Ghana here, Gilbert, with a mobile phone, imaging a plant and showing this to some of his farmer colleagues. So these technologies allow us to determine when we should water our plants. So I'm going to show some preliminary data from some of the field trials we've done in Kumasi last year. Thank you to Stephen and Patricia, who are on the call, for providing the data and executing, I think, some really exciting experiments. So what they've done is trialed two different rice varieties with this alternate wetting and drying technique and the continuous flooding technique. And you can see that even though the plants are allowed to dry the soil periodically, they maintain the same rice yield as if the soil was continuously flooding. And you think, well, this is a great result. it's really important, particularly in drier regions, that this form of agriculture is disseminated to farmers. Actually, farmers expressed a preference for the look of the rice plants that were grown with the alternate wetting and drying technique. I understand that in Ghana, there is a one village, one dam policy that the government has instituted. So if drought comes and villagers are forced to conserve their water resources, but they still want to grow rice, this potential technique allows them to save water and still achieve high yielding rice. Very similar story with this technique of partial root zone drying, and we've looked at tomato cropping. So with the partial root zone drying technique, because only every second furrow is being irrigated, it's possible to save a considerable amount of water. Again, no significant difference in yield between our well-watered treatments, WW, and our partial root zone drying treatments. And here's my colleague, Dr. Stephen Yeboah from Kumasi, demonstrating the trial that they had set up. And here's me, you know, engaged in discussion about the results of the trial. So I'm going to close there. I've probably spoken for too long already, but I wanted to convey my excitement for this particular work. I think there are some conclusions we need to make. When most people think about irrigation, they think about the hardware, the rain guns, the drip irrigation, the center pivot irrigation, and that costs money. I would argue that we need to decouple our innovation in agriculture away from infrastructure and financial capital, but to actually empower smallholders to make reasonable irrigation decisions around their crops. Clearly, that relies on having safe, sustainable supplies of water to do this. And I think this is where governments can help, particularly via initiatives such as the One Dam, One Village policy. And I'll close with my final comment, and I would argue that these water-saving agricultural techniques, such as alternate wetting and drying and partial root zone drying, actually provide win-win situations. They allow us to sustainably manage a critical resource, water, but also enhance our food security. And so at that point, I will close, and I think there'll be some questions that I've posed that we can engage with later as we go through the seminar. Thank you very much. I'll hand back to you, Akan, as chairman.
Thank you very much, Ian. That was fantastic. You know, as you were speaking here, I noticed there are lots of farmers, believe it or not, on this call. And I can almost feel the excitement in their tummy. I know, for example, that there is Israel Isaiah, who is on Dras Farms. There is Rita, who is the CEO of Bow Havens Farms in Nigeria. I guess for me, I want to ask a very simple question, Ian. This sounds very technical, this thing around alternate drying. And I guess in my mind is how easy it is for a farmer, a local farmer, to set this up in their farm. Does it require huge capital? Is it a simple technology? Is it easily accessible? So can you make it very plain? Because obviously, from your PowerPoint, it almost feels esoteric. But I think it's actually that simple. Can you just quickly explain in just 1 minute, please?
The alternate wetting and drying technique is very simple to set up, Akan. All you need to do is take some perforated plastic tubes, and I've given the example of cola bottles or soft drink bottles, and put holes in them and insert them in the field. And this allows you to measure this water table height. And so this is this process called safe alternate wetting and drying. As long as you don't let the water table height go more than 15 centimeters below the soil surface, the consensus response across the literature, hundreds of studies done, but none done until our work in Africa, is that you'll achieve the same rice yields.
That is incredible. So basically from studies, this has happened in other continents. But as far as you're concerned, this simple method of saving and conserving water for a local farmer hasn't been tried so much in Africa. That means the farmers in the room can actually try this out.
Yeah, if you're a rice farmer, I would encourage you to do this. There have, I think, been 2 published studies, one from Malawi, one from Uganda, that have trialed the technique in scientific situations. what we're doing within the Recirculate project is not just trialing it at our research institutes, but also trialing it in farmers' fields to make them aware of the technology, get them accustomed to using it, and then hopefully they will be able to adopt the technique. The other point that I would make is that this is not expensive technology. I sent one of my master's students several years ago to Nepal. She rented a piece of land to grow her rice crop and trial the technique in a Nepalese village. She was off grid essentially for 3 months. The first purchase she made in the village was 16 bottles of Coca-Cola. Now, she didn't drink them. She poured the Coca-Cola away, but she had 16 bottles that she could insert in her rice field that she had, rented. And so, you know, we trained her at Lancaster how to implement the technique in the greenhouse. She was incredibly motivated and independent. She worked with a non-government organization in Nepal, and she published this fantastic paper describing her results and experience in Nepal. And the technology was minimal. She rented a piece of land. She engaged with the villagers to ensure
and she just tried it out.
Access to the water. And she just simply measured the height of the water table using these Coca-Cola bottles. A really transformative story of what one person can achieve.
Can do. That's fantastic, Ian. So, you know what? Actually, I think at this point, I want to engage everybody. So we're going to have a very quick engagement session. So everybody look at your chat section. We're going to have 2 quick questions, okay? Now, the first question is this. So Ian began his talk by painting a picture of how China you know, China's population is crazy. Can China feed itself? And China has been able to do that. So the first question is this. Can Chinese food security success be repeated in Africa? So that's the first question. Second question is this. Now, obviously, farmers need water to grow their crops. But in many cases, in drought and not enough water, and Ian has given us some sense of water-saving methods or techniques. So the second question is this. What would encourage a farmer, a local farmer, follow me, to take up these water-saving techniques? So there are 4 options in that question 2. So if you click on the Mentimeter link on the chat, please do it now and respond to both questions. Can the Chinese food security success be repeated in Africa? And secondly, of the 4 options, A, B, C, and D, what do you think would encourage a farmer, are you following me, to take up a technique? So I think the first question, we're having some results live as we progress. So 11 people say yes. 1 person says no. I would love to know who that 1 person is. So if you are the 1 person who said no, can you just kind of let me know who you are on the chat or in a private message to me, please? But I want to get a sense of why don't you think Africa can repeat the Chinese success for food security? So there's 17, the years are winning. There's 18 years are winning. That's fantastic. The years are winning. So that means there is some kind of positive energy in the room. Okay, Nicholas Drager, I'm coming to you. It's you. That's good. I like that. So there is some positive energy in the room that actually we can repeat the success that China made in Africa. I think for me, that's very encouraging. Question 2, please. Question 2. Now, the second question is this. So what would encourage a farmer, follow me, to adopt the water-saving agri techniques that Ian has just given an example of? Is it because they want to save water for community? Is it because approaching those techniques would give us less time that is spent on irrigation? Is it because it will increase their knowledge to improve their crop quality? Or is it because there'll be payments for them to decrease their water imprints? What do you think would be the most important driver why farmers would take up techniques to save water? Oh, wow, that's interesting. So there seems to be a pattern here. Okay, let's keep watching. So keep voting, please. Keep voting, please. Keep voting, please. That's fantastic. What would encourage a farmer, especially if this technique is very, very simple and is very, very cheap? I mean, you can literally do it in your back garden. So what would encourage farmers to take it up? Okay. So I think, okay, go on. I'll give you like 1 more minute for some more voting. That's interesting. So it feels to me like the one currently receiving the least attention is water footprint. So farmers, don't worry so much about that. I'm going to ask Ian to do kind of comment briefly on what he's seen in the results before we wrap up this session and go to the next speaker. So yeah, Ian, what are you seeing? What are you seeing so far? Is it expected from people's contribution?
Yeah, it's really interesting, this. I mean, farmers clearly need to benefit from any water-saving agricultural technique. And
Yes.
Something that I've not really discussed today is a lot of these water-saving agricultural techniques do actually improve crop quality.
Okay.
This is only of use to the farmer if they are getting more income for producing
From
this
it.
higher quality crop.
That's interesting.
So some of my colleagues in Spain working in wine grape production, they're really astonished that, you know, with their deficit irrigation techniques, the wine grapes are of better quality, yet the farmers are not getting any greater payment for that.
It. Whoa, wow.
So markets often may need adjusting to try and pay farmers for better quality foods.
I think that kind of goes back to the point here. Obviously, improved quality would kind of convert to improved payment. But if there is a huge focus with African local farmers, where it's not so much about the money they are making or the extra business dimension of what they do, but just to be able to feed family and kind of live their life back and forth. So in some sense, maybe that is where that gap is based on this data. So, but I think I will come back to you, Nick, to kind of get a sense from you why you think Africa cannot kind of replicate what China has done. So just hold that thought. And I think for now, we'll go to the next speaker. I think that's been an incredible interactive session for the first part of the talk. And then we're moving to the next session. So stick with me because we have a lot more interaction to continue with. Now, the second person. So Ian has focused on water, irrigation. The second person wants to focus on nutrients, fertilizer, soil nutrients, okay? Now, the person is Dr. Stephen Yeboah. Now, Stephen is an amazing guy. So he's a research scientist at CSIR-Crops Research Institute in Ghana. He obtained his first degree in first-class honors in agriculture from University of Education in Ghana, an MSc degree in agronomy, and a PhD in agroecology at Gansu Agricultural University in 2017. He's published over 40 peer-reviewed papers, and he's currently a lead, a co-I on the Recirculate project focused on nutrients. Absolute pleasure to welcome the amazing Stephen to give us a short talk on nutrients as a second dimension to food security. Over to you, Stephen.
Hello, yeah, can you see my slide?
Yes, we can, boss.
Good. So I am privileged to be speaking on this platform. I know we have a lot of great people here who have a lot of experience in this subject. Can Africa feed itself? We want you to share your experience at the end of this session. I am delighted to be speaking on this agricultural sustainability because it is very important. Sub-Saharan Africa has about 1 billion people, and we are experiencing an annual growth between 2 to 4%. This makes it a very significant case for increased crop production and increased livestock production to feed our people. If you look at the statistics just released by Global Report on Food Security 2020, East Africa alone has about 27 million food insecure people, 34 million food insecure in South Africa, and then West Africa has about 12 million food insecure people. This is a very, very terrible situation. What it means is that Africa must do more to feed itself. And one of the significant resources for increased productivity to feed our people is soil. So this morning from Ghana, I'll be talking on how various soil interventions can help improve our food security situations. When we look at Sub-Saharan Africa, about 66% of our farmlands are stricken by severe soil degradation. So we have a situation where the soils in Africa are very old compared to soils in Europe, which is a very new one. So our soils in terms of productivity is not very good. We suffer from a lot of degradation. If we take irrigated lands alone, on average, about 7% of our irrigated lands in Africa is performing below their potential, and about 14% of rain-fed croplands is also performing below their potential. Rangelands is about 45%. And all this is due to soil degradation, which is making about 60 million smallholder farmers' livelihood at risk. So over 60 million people in Africa have their livelihoods at risk because of soil degradation. What can we do then? There is a lot of ample evidence that national fertilizer programs can help reverse the decline in soil fertility. So one of the key interventions, we have several interventions we can talk at different levels: policy level, institutional level, farm level, community level. But one key intervention we have realized is that if well implemented across Africa, will help increase our food security is fertilizer programs. So fertilizer application rate in sub-Saharan Africa has increased per acre, but the consumption is with respect to few countries. If we look at this figure, there is an increasing trend of fertilizer consumption in Africa. At least between 2016 and 2017, we are having about 32% relative regional growth in fertilizer consumption. But this consumption is determined by few countries in Africa: Ethiopia, South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya. These are few 6 countries that is increasing, that is determining the fertilizer increase. But if you want to make Africa food secure, then every country should be increasing their productivity in terms of fertilizer consumption. Now, if you look at this in terms of international and West Africa perspective, we have a recorded increase in fertilizer consumption between 2017 and 2018 by 63%. And what are the reasons that is accounting for this increase? We are now seeing favorable commodity and fertilizer prices in the global market. So there is massive private sector investment in fertilizer production, especially with respect to urea. Hitherto, fertilizer production has been hinged on government intervention, but now we have a lot of private sector investment in fertilizer production, and that is causing an increase in the consumption of fertilizer across West and in terms of international perspective. Also, one of the reasons accounting for the increase in fertilizer consumption is good extension outreach programs with smallholder farmers. And this is key because apart from government's interventions, we have a lot of private sector, CSOs, NGOs now into agriculture extension activities. And this activity is increasing consumption of fertilizer. That has a replica effect in terms of crop production or in terms of food production to help Africa achieve food security. We have a lot of government subsidized programs. Hitherto, we are aware some time ago in Africa, World Bank has banned fertilizer subsidy. But in different countries in Africa now, governments are finding ways to subsidize fertilizer production. For example, Ghana and Ethiopia are on the forefront of this strategy. Governments in Ghana and Ethiopia are subsidizing fertilizer production, fertilizer distribution to farmers. If you look at this figure, you will see the increasing trend of various fertilizer production sources. So if you take NPK, it has the highest consumption across West Africa. And then this is Ghana specific, but it cuts across West Africa. Because of the fertilizer subsidy implemented by government of Ghana under the Planting for Food and Jobs program, Ghana is recording about 84% increase in fertilizer consumption. And this is enhancing economic growth. I'll show it later on. So you see NPK growth is increasing, urea consumption is increasing, organic fertilizer consumption is increasing. This figure will, this slide will show it more. If you look at on my left, you will see NPK percentage consumption is about 48%, urea 20%, ammonium sulfate 10%, organic fertilizer 9%. And this is attributed solely to the fertilizer subsidy program being implemented in Ghana. So if you look at the various compounds, in terms of the various fertilizer sources, NPK is the highest, has the highest consumption compared to the other fertilizer sources. The only worrying situation as depicted here is that organic fertilizer consumption is very low. We are still depending more on mineral fertilizer for our crop production, which also has environmental quality challenges. Now, if you look at the fertilizer subsidy program in Ghana, which is the game changer, I term it, there are key interventions to accelerate the growth of agriculture. This is an option that encourages fertilizer intake by farmers, especially by smallholders. So specifically, how does the program run? The program gives 50% subsidy to farmers. So if a fertilizer is $1 or $2, this is being sold to 25% of that amount, and then after harvest, you pay the rest. This program is this kind of schedule is helping a lot of farmers apply fertilizer to their crops. Either to, we have an experience where many farmers in Ghana and then even across sub-Saharan Africa don't apply any fertilizer, mineral or organic fertilizer, because they presume the cost is very high. There is no much in terms of benefits. Now, if we take the fertilizer subsidy program in Ghana alone, it has helped improve economic growth and employment. The statistics is very clear. Maize, which is one of the cardinal cereal crops in Ghana, and then in sub-Saharan Africa, has seen about 14% increase after the introduction of the fertilizer subsidy program. Sorghum, 11%. Rice is 15% increase due to one single intervention. Rice, Africa is importing a lot of rice. So if our governments can get these interventions right, what it means is that we will be cutting down rice importation, and then we'll be saving a lot of money for our economic growth. GDP growth rate has increased by 0.16% points annual on average due to the fertilizer intervention program. Now there is a reduction in unemployment, and especially the youth. Either two way migrating, as common to a lot of African countries, migrate from the rural areas to the urban centers to look for unavailable jobs. But because this intervention is making all these resources available to them, they prefer to stay because they are getting increases in crop production. And this has replica effect in terms of food security. Now there is drop in prices of agricultural products, increased household welfare, increased export of priority crops like maize, rice, sorghum, and all this is, so the fertilizer subsidy program is more welfare enhancing. It is a single strategy that can help Africa turn around and be food secure, because we have most of our soils here being depleted. That one, we don't need to argue about that. Our soils are depleted of all the major nutrients. So the key thing is water, which Ian talked about. Then the next thing is nutrients. Water and nutrient shortage is key to sustainable agricultural production in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, what is Recirculate doing in terms of all these challenges? So as my first speaker said, we are exploring opportunities of managing both water and nutrients. So he spoke about the water aspect. In terms of the nutrient sources, we know, as the data shown, Africa is using a lot of mineral fertilizer for its production. Then we also want to encourage the use of organic fertilizer, so using local resources. So we are exploring how we can determine the right fertilizer for two key crops in Africa, that is tomato and rice. If you use mineral fertilizer as the digestate, which is an organic fertilizer, are you going to have the same production rate, or there is going to be difference? And then our initial showed, I thank to my team for the wonderful work. Increase your recommended nitrogen education. You are getting the same fertilizer with the digestate, which is the organic fertilizer. There is about 33% more yield than the NPK fertilizer. And this is very positive. Wow. This is an initial resource that we need validation. But it is very positive and worth mentioning, because we know the implication of continuous use of mineral fertilizer for crop production. So we want to increase rice production in sub-Saharan Africa to curtail rice import, but we want to do it using resources efficiently. And that is the focus of Recirculate project in Ghana. I want to conclude by saying that we should make strenuous efforts to build capacity of farmers to overcome the issues of lack of knowledge, where smallholder farmers lack access to information because of weak extension contacts. This is very key when we want to resolve all the nutrient depletion issues in Africa. We want to make strenuous efforts to overcome limited resources in terms of funds, in terms of credit facilities. These are all along the value chain of fertilizer requirement. Then we want to also talk about profitability arising from economic factors. Fertilizers adequate, but maybe not be profitable because the high cost of getting fertilizer to the field. So we need to address all these issues, and then with key interventions like fertilizer subsidy, Africa will be food secure. Thank you for listening.
My goodness, Stephen, you have no idea what you've just done. People are bombarding the chat room with questions and commentary. So but I think for the sake of a good coordination, I'm going to allow the next speaker, because then we can put the collection of questions together. So Stephen, if you can do me a favor, if you look at the chat sections, there's a lot of questions that has been asked. So if you can answer them as much as you can by chat, while the second speaker, the next speaker starts, that would be good. And at the end, I'll come back and pick the highlights so everybody can benefit from it. Is that clear, Stephen? Yeah?
Yes, that's clear.
Fantastic. So go to the chat because people are looking for you, man. You are a wanted man. So now I want to move to the next incredible speaker. This Professor George Williams Otim-Nape from Uganda. Now, this man is incredible. I have to tell you, talk about agriculture and Uganda and not mention Professor Otim-Nape, then you are making a fundamental mistake. Now, Professor Otim-Nape is published, in respect to what he has done in Uganda, his work has been so remarkable that he received the President's Award for the amount of impact his work has done. He's currently the chair of the Institute of the Africa Innovation Institute in Uganda. But also he obviously has got a bachelor's degree in agriculture, an MSc from Makerere University, a PhD in plant biology. He's done doctoral training in White College, University of London, Scottish Crops Research Institute, GFK Stanley School of Government, Harvard University. I mean, this man has been everywhere. Currently, he's the founder and chairman of the Africa Innovation Institute, a non-governmental center of excellence in Kampala, Uganda, and he focuses on innovation and technology in Africa. Now, he wants to take us on a separate subject matter, still within sustainable agriculture. So Ian focused on water. Stephen focused on fertilizer, on nutrients.
Yes,
Professor Otim-Nape would focus on diseases, pests. And I think this is very important because everything comes together to answer the question, can Africa feed itself? Professor Otim-Nape, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akan, for that elaborate introduction. I appreciate all those very kind words from you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so pleased to be in this meeting this afternoon. And I would like to share my talk with you on crop pests and diseases in Africa. This will complement the earlier presentation that have been given that had focused on water and on soil. And my talk will illustrate the impact of pests and diseases in Africa using cassava mosaic as a case study. I know that some of you may be familiar with the pests and diseases, but we really know that these are major challenges to food security in Africa. And pests and diseases have been partly responsible for the declining agricultural productivity that we hear about. We know that at least up to 40% of crop yields, or at least we know that up to 40% of crop yield losses are due to crop pests and diseases. And this has been recorded in many crops, including wheat, maize, soybean, rice, etc. And just to give you a glimpse of what pests and diseases can do is the case of maize stem borer. This pest attacks maize and bores into the stems, and it reduces quite a lot of yield. And the pest is estimated to have caused a yield loss of $450 million. Another good example is the fall armyworm, which is a new disease which is a new pest in Africa. It appeared sometime in 2016 on maize, and the losses within the first 12 months were estimated at $3 billion. The desert locust is another example. And this has been causing a lot of devastation in Eastern Africa. So,
Hello, Prof. Oh wow, I think we probably lost Professor Otim-Nape. That's interesting. So I'm sure he's going to join back the call. So I think what we'll do right away is Prof back on the call? So guys, can you let me know when Prof gets back on the call so we can proceed? So I think what we can do now really is actually let's have an activity. So Stephen spent some time and gave us a good sense of the challenges with respect to agriculture and also the opportunities. Now, before I get back to, if you like, asking or responding to a few points that have been raised in the group, I think we can have a quick activity. Now, it's a very simple one. So everybody listening to me, can you look at the chat section? And I'd like you to answer 2 questions for me, please. Okay? Look at the chat section and answer 2 questions. The first question is this. Does government fertilizer subsidy benefit rural poor farmers in your country? So the idea is, you say your country, you say yes or no. So the first question is, does government fertilizer subsidies, does it benefit rural poor farmers in your country? So when you're responding, say your country and then say yes, it does benefit them or no. So your country, yes or no. That's first question. Second question is, what are the opportunities and challenges for the application of mineral fertilizers in farming systems? And you can respond to that just with a chat. So click on the link, click on Mentimeter and respond on the Mentimeter link. There is a link on the chat. Don't do it on the chat. Click on the Mentimeter link and you will see the question waiting for you there, please. So click on the Mentimeter link and respond on that link. So question 1 is, does government fertilizer subsidies benefit rural poor farmers in your country? So there's yes or no. So Nigeria's, Ghana, yes. Yes in Nigeria. Yes in Botswana. Oh, that's interesting. No in the UK. So the person who said no in the UK, can you express who you are, please? Because I'd like to call on you later to explain why you said no in the UK, so people can get a sense of the comparison. So if you said no in the UK, can you let me know in the chat section so I know who you are? I'll come back to you later, please. So Ghana says yes, it benefits them. Uganda says no. That's interesting. Okay. Nigeria says yes. Nigeria says yes. Okay. Botswana says yes. So you just respond. That's question one. So government subsidies does benefit poor rural farmers. I think we can go to question two now. Question two. Now, question two is this. So click on the Mentimeter and you see question two. What are the opportunities and challenges of mineral fertilizers in farming systems in sub-Saharan Africa? Let's begin with challenges. So click on that Mentimeter and let me see the challenges. What do you think? In farming systems in sub-Saharan Africa. Click on the Mentimeter link. There's a second link on the group, on the chat section. And just tell me what you think are the challenges. Doris, thank you very much. You think soil degradation is a big challenge? Okay. Okay, the acidity of soil, high transaction cost, pollution of the underground. That's interesting. That's interesting. So just challenges for now, please. I will ask for opportunities after this. So increase in yield, there's pollution, okay, high transaction cost, okay, acidic soils, blanket recommendations. That's interesting. Blanket recommendations. And anything else? Let me see, what else am I seeing that is different? Okay, diseases and pests. It's a huge challenge, okay? High cost, obviously, increased yields, coping mechanisms. Okay, how about we switch it over to the opportunities? What do you think are the opportunities of fertilizers and mineral fertilizers in farming systems in sub-Saharan Africa? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, high cost. So lack of mechanization obviously is a challenge, I believe. Climate change is obviously a challenge. Not sustainable. Okay, it's not sustainable. That's obviously a challenge. Okay. Yes, let me see anything else happening in the chat. I really appreciate everybody contributing to this. I think it's very fascinating to see people's lines of thought. Okay. Thank you very much for the contribution. Thank you, Alex. Alex Yeboah says increase of livelihood of farmers. That's really good. And Tapos Kuma says it decreases soil fertility. Judith Odell says acidity of soils is obviously an issue. Christian, Clement, Ezepue, I can see you, sir. Poor distribution network, wrong application of those fertilizers itself is a challenge. Nelly Kangwa talks about inputs are delivered too late. Oh, right, that's really interesting. Delivered late and soil degradation, nutrient leaching, Labuan Bright. Thank you so much for the contribution. I think that's very powerful. That's very powerful. So guys, is Professor Williams Otim back on the call? Okay. So Nick, can you hear me? Nick, are you still on the call? So before we move to the next speaker, let me resolve a few of the issues. And I want to respond to two key questions. So Nick, the original question I was asked is, can Africa replicate what China did with respect to setting up their food security? And your response was a categorical no. Can you explain in just 1 minute why you said no? Nick, please, if you can hear me. Can you please unmute Nick? Nicholas Drager. 1 minute, let me find out where you are. Can somebody please unmute Nicholas Drager, please?
Oh, I'm unmuted. Yes.
Okay, please, Nick, in 1 minute, can you give us a sense of why you think Africa cannot replicate what China did? Because I thought it was very interesting. Why you? Yeah. Why did you have that view? Go on, please.
It was a loaded answer to a loaded question, Akan.
Okay.
It's maybe not entirely why Africa can't do it, but I think there are some elements as to why Africa needs to look at different solutions and different ways of doing it. I mean, we have a completely different agricultural and environmental context in Africa versus China. So it's got to take account of that, different soil qualities, all that sort of thing. That's a big sweeping generalization, but it has to be thought about. And whether Africa wants to follow the Chinese model is the bigger question. And I'd have
okay, I see what you mean.
Because we don't want in Africa to go, and there are various examples in China of building rows of trees, massive rows of trees in the Gobi Desert to try and hold back the desert and try to create agricultural land out of the Gobi. Massive artificial redirections of water from various rivers like Yangtze to the northern parts of China for agriculture because of the soil and water degradation and so on in that part of China. All these sort of completely environmentally negative projects. So we in Africa need to be a lot more intelligent about this, and we can be. We have the skill sets, just judging by all the comments and the people on this call.
Okay.
Previous calls, and also, I was listening into the Nordic Africa business webcast this morning. It was a session on agriculture in Africa, and there's a huge amount of skills, there's a huge amount of interest, financial interest in Africa. There's a lot of work to be done, and we've talked about all the issues: smallholders, lack of financing, improper irrigation, all that sort of stuff. But all those problems can be solved. Whether we want to follow the Chinese model is the bigger question. That's why I say no, we should not.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think I understand what you mean. So it's not a question of Africa cannot do it, but there's a lot of layers, and Africa almost needs to get its act together. And
Africa needs to do it for itself. And work on, utilize the thinking that's on this call and on previous calls through the Recirculate program and all the other stuff. There's a huge amount of knowledge in Africa. We can do it ourselves. We don't need to go and look for other models elsewhere in completely different environmental contexts. We don't want to go to California and stuff up our environment like the Californians have done. Trying to be the garden of the US, where vast parts of California are practically desert. So you dry out the Colorado River and you dry out various lakes in Colorado, in California, and completely ruin the environment, which is partly why they're having these massive forest fires up in the north of California. That's the last thing we want to do.
Thank you very much. That's really
one of the slides that was presented, I think, by Stephen, on the massive soil degradation within Africa, particularly in my home country of South Africa, where we've overdone it with monocrop cultures and all that sort of stuff. We were a red zone on that map. The rest of Africa doesn't want to necessarily do what South Africa's done.
Thank you very much, Nick. That's fantastic. So I think Professor Otim-Nape is back on the call. Am I correct? Is that right? Yes, I think he's on the call.
Yes, I'm back now.
Beautiful. So could you just go on, please, and just wrap up your talk? Please, you can proceed. So you can share your screen now. So we are back to concluding the talk on the pests and diseases, which I think is absolutely crucial, an important segment around this big question: can Africa feed itself? Back to you, Prof.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very sorry we had a sudden power blackout. I think it's a nationwide power blackout. So
that's all right.
It went off. So I'm so sorry.
That's going. That's fine.
I had started my talk regarding pests, how they are important and so on. But allow me now to go straight to the example of cassava mosaic. Many of us might be aware about cassava. This is a very important crop in Africa. Africa produces 230 million metric tons, which is about 50% of global production. This crop is so important that about 250 million Africans depend on it. The crop we are talking about is important for its roots and is grown throughout the tropics. Now, the story about cassava mosaic is that this disease previously had been in Africa, but had been in a mild form. Now, around 1988-89, a very severe form of the disease appeared in Uganda. And it is spread throughout the country, including neighboring countries, and later on, by 2005, it had covered most of Eastern and Central Africa. The disease is transmitted by whitefly vector, which you can see here, and the whiteflies transmits it to healthy plants and spreads, and from there the disease can spread throughout the field and then into the region and so on. So cassava mosaic spread throughout Eastern and Central Africa from around 1989 up to about 2006. Now, the impact on cassava has been great. The figure here shows the production of cassava in Uganda before the epidemic. This was the period before the epidemic. This is the area, the green line is the area under cassava production. Then the purple line is total production, and then the orange line is yield. So the epidemic appeared in about 1989 and seriously impacted on both the area under cassava production as well as production and yield. And at its peak epidemic period, that was around 1994, the epidemic reduced cassava production in Uganda to about 20% of the regional production. The impact of this has been on loss of cassava biodiversity. There was a drastic decline in cassava production. The economic cost was estimated at about $60 million annually. And this was followed by massive food shortages, and deaths were recorded in some places in Eastern Africa, in Eastern Uganda. The Minister of Finance, in his budget statement in 1997, indicated that cassava mosaic epidemic was responsible for a decline in the national GDP. So, the emergence of this disease puzzled many of us, because before that, we knew that there was cassava mosaic, but it had been mild on cassava, and cassava was able to live with it. But the appearance of this disease was traced down to a recombination between two similar viruses. These two viruses had existed in Africa before. There was one which existed in East Africa called East African cassava mosaic virus. This was along the Kenya coast. And then there was the African cassava mosaic virus, which was everywhere in the rest of Africa. So these two viruses shared during the process of recombination and replication. The DNA of EACMV, the East African virus, and the DNA of the African cassava mosaic virus got mixed up and integrated into the DNA of the East African cassava mosaic virus. And this hybridization created a novel virus, which was very, very, very severe, very, very violent. And whenever it infects cassava, 2 years later, you don't see cassava in that area. So we embarked on aggressive breeding for resistance as a strategy for control. And by between 1994 and 98, 8 new cassava varieties had been developed. Okay. And this was followed by extensive multiplication, dissemination, and training of farmers. And on December 14th, 1998, the government declared the problem of cassava mosaic sorted out. However, sorting out the problem of cassava mosaic did not sort out the old challenges that farmers were getting. The resolution of this problem resulted into huge production of cassava. And then the problem became, what do we do with this cassava? And the problem we were facing with was farmers coming almost all the time requesting for market of their cassava. So we decided that the solution to dealing with this problem was to create a market for cassava. And we saw that any industrial product that can be made out of carbohydrates should as well be made out of cassava. And we embarked on talking to the industries which use carbohydrates in making their products and convincing them so that they can use cassava for the production of their products. So we talked to a number of those companies. Some of them showed interest, and we started working with them to run experimental trials for biscuit making out of cassava, for bread, and even for beer. And some of the companies took a lot of interest, and they requested that we supply them with the high quality cassava flour. But at that time, we did not even have a lot of cassava. So we went backwards to train cassava processors. We selected processors, facilitated them with equipment, and trained them on how to process cassava. Then we engaged them with the industries so that they're able to negotiate and agree on supply contracts. And we worked with the Uganda National Bureau of Standards to develop standards for high quality cassava flour and to certify the cassava which was being produced by SMEs and community processing groups. So this created huge market for cassava, and the processors and farmers enjoyed increasing markets for their produce and for their product. The outcome of all this is that by 2019, the project had created employment for about 789,000 people. We opened markets to the tune of 40 to 70,000 metric tons, and a total of 230 metric tons of fresh root cassava were produced and sold to processors. We developed about 82 SMEs who are processing cassava, and about 183 community processing groups who would process cassava, back them, and sell them to end-user industries. The total benefit, the total beneficiaries out of this project turned out to be about 1 million people who benefited directly and indirectly.
That's incredible.
Increased earnings from production and sale of cassava, including cassava flour, was estimated at about $29 million. Out of this, 10 million was earned by farmers, and about 19 million processors. The overall impact of this had been on improved living conditions. The beneficiaries had improved household assets, both in terms of total value, in terms of accommodation, housing, lighting, and so on. On the screen here, you can see this lady who managed to achieve two things with the money from cassava. She was able to buy this motorcycle, and then they were able to build this family house, which you can see. Another impact was on this gentleman who was able also to make a lot of money to build to put up the house which you see at the back. And there were several of these examples. So the intervention to deal with the cassava mosaic had a lot of impact on the livelihood of beneficiaries. So what are the implications of the story of cassava mosaic in terms of sustainable food security? The cassava story gives us a good example of effective collaboration for impactful research for ensuring food security, changing lives, and the industry. It also tells us that addressing pests and diseases is critical for ensuring sustainable food security in Africa. It also tells us that good science must impact on development. It must create change in people's lives, change the economy, and the environment. So the big question, which has been coming since we started this webinar. Africa's population currently is 1.3 billion and is scheduled to double by 2050. And this will be 2.5 million mouths to feed, as has already been indicated. So the big question is, can Africa feed itself? We believe that the answer is yes. And this can only be done if the different stakeholders, like research and academia, the private sector, government and communities, if these people work together to address the challenges caused by pests, diseases, and other challenges on food security. I think when we come together in this way, we can create a change and we can enable Africa to feed itself. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. That's absolutely fantastic. And fantastic. And I particularly like the fact that you chose fertilizer, so cassava, as a core example to showcase what pesticide does and the potential for pesticide management and the impact of pesticide management on productivity and ultimately food security. I think for me, I was reading the group and one person said, as a matter of fact, even though it's not well said most often, but farmers know that pests and diseases is a crisis in many occasions. But that in some cases is because farmers haven't been exposed, if you like, to the fundamental or opportunities or solutions to resolve their issues. And somebody had compared pesticides that is worse than Boko Haram. I just smiled when I saw that. Thank you so much, Prof. That's actually what somebody said in the group. Thank you, Prof, for a very insightful presentation.
I can. You're on mute, my friend.
Okay.
Missed you.
So I'll come again. So Prof, thank you so very much for a very insightful presentation. I think I was saying that I like the fact that you chose cassava specifically for your example, because the average farmer across the continent know cassava. I think most of the time they face the issues around diseases and pests, but maybe they haven't figured out how to resolve it. So seeing the fact that even though these are core pests and diseases for cassava or on cassava, there are methods and ways of resolving those diseases. And obviously when it's been resolved, you see the opportunity spring up and the benefits to the community, to the family, and to stakeholders. It's extensive. And I was saying somebody was comparing the crisis of pests and disease that is worse than Boko Haram. I saw it in the chat and I just smiled. So I guess in some sense, we can actually move to the last section of the webinar. The last section of the webinar, and obviously I'll come back to a few questions, is focused on two dimensions. The first one is around capacity building. Because ultimately, you might have incredible mechanisms for conservation or for irrigation or for nutrient application. But if people don't know what to do, then we have a fundamental problem. What is the leverage on developing the capacity or building the knowledge for farmers or key stakeholders? Is the first presenter. Then the second one, we kind of wrap it up with a case study of a young farmer and the challenges and what she had to do just to make it happen. And so that's to be the final section of the webinar. So we can actually appreciate the fact that people are doing things on the continent and there are real success stories. And so on that note, I want to call our next speaker, and I mean, she's amazing. So that's, I want to call on Dr. Patricia Oteng-Darko. Patricia is a research scientist at CSIR-Crops Research Institute in Ghana. She holds a PhD in salt and water engineering, and she's a professional engineer certified by the Ghana Institution of Engineering. She's currently engaged in different water-efficient irrigation methods and how to improve drought resilience of rain-fed crop production systems. She's obviously an alumnus of Netherlands Fellowship Program and Australia Awards Africa. And obviously was also a resident at Lancaster University under this Recirculate capacity building program. And Patricia would speak to us about dimensions of capacity building with respect to the question, can Africa feed itself? Patricia, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Akan. You can see me as Stephen Yeboah. I am Patricia Oteng-Darko. It's very unfortunate that I'm having challenges on my PC and projecting my screen. So I'm currently in Dr. Yeboah's office.
That's fine. We can see clearly.
Seeing me as Stephen Yeboah. It's quite an onerous task when you have to follow such good presenters. And I would say kudos to the earlier presenters for delivering such a mighty presentation. I would like to talk about harnessing human capital in Africa to aid Africa feed itself. I think today we are talking about the ways and means by which Africa can feed itself. And most of our presenters have been able to answer some of the diverse ways in which the continent can feed itself. We all know that human capacity is one of the major resources that any country or continent can have. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development defines human capacity as the knowledge, skills, competencies, and other attributes embodied in individual or groups of individuals acquired during their life and used to produce goods, services, or ideas in market circumstances. In Africa, we are lagging behind when it comes to human capital. When we look at the map here showing some of the areas with the most developed human capital in deeper blues, we can see that Africa is quite lacking. We are only seeing lighter blues, and this is much reflected in Rwanda and Ghana, where we have averages above the global average. That is hovering around 62%. I'm talking about the human capital index. So what do we want to do as Africans to improve our human capital, especially what it means for agricultural production? If we get improved human capital, we get the ability and willingness of our farmers or agricultural workers to improve production using quite advanced production technologies. They get to adopt new production technologies. They are quite enhanced to be able to use these technologies, to be able to read around them and also adopt them. We get the ability to schedule production to meet market demands. And we can find this quite broadly in commercial farms, where most of the schedules are quite routine. You get to be able to schedule everything from production to the market. And in so doing, we curtail a lot of post-harvest losses. And we also get the ability to add value to our agricultural products. When we have enhanced capacity, we don't just bring out the products in their raw format. We get to add value, and in adding value, we are also increasing the income from that particular product. And when we do this, it's going to attract the youth into agriculture. We are also going to attract a lot of investments into agriculture. So in just doing one particular thing that is improving on the human capital of a nation or the continent, we are getting all these repercussive effects, which are quite positive. We have 4 levels that we can attain capacity human capacity development. If we are talking about the national level, we go to policy. And in policy, we talk about promoting the educational systems that build on the knowledge and skills or competencies in agriculture and related fields. We also get to promote agricultural research and extension, education, and delivery. At the institutional level, we are adapting our agricultural education to a changing environmental needs. And I quite remember during the last Recirculate workshop, we had a presenter talking about going extensively into education, where we had somebody from Nigeria saying that there are a lot of students now doing attachments on fields. And you could see the direct link from these instances to agriculture. We have the program level where we develop and sustain extension education. We do media outreach to let people know the essence of building capacities in agricultural fields and other related fields. And then we come to one of the most important aspects, that is the household or individual levels, where we build capacities of individuals, especially our farmers and people in agriculture, the labor force, the individual farmers, agricultural workers, the labor within that field, so that we will be able to increase their capacity. And in so doing, we also give them incentives. In this case, Dr. Yeboah talked about the fertilizer subsidy, and this all goes to affect the household level capacity building. We have Recirculate working in Africa to improve our human capital. The whole project is mostly about capacity building. And what is Recirculate doing at some of these levels to improve the human capital in Africa? So I'll take 3 of these levels that Recirculate is quite involved in. First of all, the earlier slide I talked about policy. Yes, Recirculate is involved in policy, but it's not reflecting down to the household level. So I don't want to go there. The policy that is involved at this stage is the policy research. And I know ATPS in Kenya is quite handy with this as the collaborator of the project. So at the institutional level, the project is building the capacities of researchers, extension, and several stakeholders through some of these things listed here. We have the in-country training workshops. During the initial stages of the project, several workshops were organized in several countries, partner countries across Africa, where the capacities of so many stakeholders were built. After this training workshop, we went ahead with the residencies, and the residencies came in 2 forms. We had the South-South residencies and the South-North residencies. The South-North residencies were those ones where Lancaster University hosted a lot of our stakeholders who were given access to expertise and advanced research facilities at the Lancaster University. We were taken through some mentoring, seminars, field visits, study tours, just to mention a few of the activities that went on at the university. And at the end of the day, we were exposed to cultural insights and interaction. I talk about we because I've had this opportunity to be part of the residencies in Lancaster, and I should say that is amazing, and they are doing a great job with that. Then we come to the South-South residencies, where after the Lancaster universities has built our capacities, some of the partner institutions were in a position to also host members from other partner institutions across Africa. So I should say that it's kind of trainer or of trainer kind of thing, not to be specific, because we're not only training, we're also building their capacities, we're exposing them to some of the success stories in our various countries. And then we talk about the capacity building or internship programs, where a few young scientists or young researchers have been appointed to work with senior scientists under the integrated research programs. And here they are doing research, they are doing extension, community engagement, and a whole lot of other items on the value chain with regards to research. And then we have the visiting researcher program, where researchers from the partner countries get to visit once again the Lancaster University to share expertise, to be able to use resources, to collaborate with scientists in the and lecturers and other experts at the Lancaster University.
Fantastic.
At the community level, Recirculate is also building capacities of our community members, especially our farmers, with regards to good agronomic practices. And we are doing this by showcasing some of the technologies that has been talked about by Prof. Dodd and Dr. Yeboah in their presentations. So we are doing demonstrations on farmers' fields. We are organizing field days, farmer field schools, and media engagements and other community engagement activities to be able to expose our farmers to these technologies and other areas of research that they are interested in, and which is sustainable and can increase production on the farmers' fields. So I have outlined a few of the activities that Recirculate is doing to improve the human capacity development in Africa. So what did Recirculate do that we think that Africa can learn from? Now, Recirculate was able to identify and isolate the human capacity development as a very important component. So the whole basis of the project was centered around knowledge exchange activities. And this has been delivered to the core. I must congratulate the project on that. And it has also tackled the human capacity development in an integrated manner. If we look at the chain, I talked about the policy development, and they were there. You look at the capacity building at the program level, they were there. At institutional level, they were there. And at household levels, you could see all the impact that the program was making. So we should say that it's very important that you tackle human capacity development along this chain so that it trickles down to even the least person. And if you do this, it extends to all the other parts and you get improved impact. They were able to also develop and implement tailor-made human capacity development programs. So you don't just take it in a group or bulk everything. You just have to segregate it and be able to point in which direction those tailor-made capacity building needs to be delivered. And then they were able to strengthen the human development capacity building programs. For instance, they have given enough capacity to the, let me take the research agencies. And then when it comes to extension, we have also built that capacity in the area. So by building the capacities of these agencies or agents who are also going to build the capacities of our farmers, they have delivered so massively in this context.
Thank you,
and
Patricia.
with this, I would say thank you very much for
Thank you so
listening.
much. So, you know, it's very interesting. I mean, you probably, when you're sitting in webinars around agricultural productivity, food security, capacity building and developing capacity of communities, capacity of farmers, it's obviously an issue that is absolutely crucial, because you can talk about all the technologies, talk about all the methods to make life better for farmers, but if nobody knows that, then it makes no difference. So thank you so much, Patricia, for that insightful presentation. I think a follow-up to that is I want to kind of get an engagement, because as I'm listening to Patricia speak, the chat section is loaded. People are having discussions, they're having negotiations, people are even striking business deals right on this chat. I mean, this is just incredible. So what I want to do is get a quick engagement from everybody, and it's a very simple one. So let's put up a simple Mentimeter for quick activity before I go back to a series of discussions and we can wrap it up. So the Mentimeter is, if you click on it right now in the chat section, it should open it up. And the question is, in just one word, who do you think should be responsible for human capacity development in Africa? Please, can you share screen? Click on that Mentimeter And in just one word, state who you think should be responsible for human capacity development in Africa. Let's go. The government, interesting. Academia, interesting. Anybody else? The state, as a government. Communities, okay. Leaders, interesting. So people are saying the government should be responsible. I like the person that said me. If you said me, can you please let me know in the chat? I want to ask you why you made that kind of response. I think it's very interesting. So me, someone said individual citizen should be responsible for capacity development. Somebody said leaders, someone said the state, someone said everyone. So someone has said businesses, agri-businesses. So what you can see here is the fact that there is a variety of responses based on people's positioning and in some sense, if like their understanding of the subject matter. And I guess for me, the takeaway from this is the fact that it has to be a collective effort for agricultural productivity, for food security to happen in Africa. And as a matter of fact, when Patricia gave us a sense of different levels of capacity building, a community level, a policy level, everybody can chip in. But if you ask me, in all honesty, the government, I believe, should take a very fundamental oversight role to make it easy for everybody to be engaged in the process. So that's actually a really good question. And I thank you for the responses. And the final response, which is like a yes or no response, is a very simple one. And the question is food security linked to human capital development in Africa? So yes or no, please. Is food security linked to the lack of human capital development in Africa? Yes or no? So it looks overwhelming. So you cannot have food security without having human capital development. That everybody seems to agree. I can't see a no yet. So 15 years, that's fantastic. So everybody seems to agree with that. 16 years, 18 years. Thank you everybody for the incredible engagement and for participating in this Mentimeter, because it's a really good way for us to engage with you and at least hear what you are saying. I can see that there's lots of discussion happening in the chat section. People are actually having discussions, critical discussions. I'll pick up on a few of those shortly. I think at this point, the last session of the group is, let's discuss a few case studies. So some actual individuals who have done this. So it gives me the absolute pleasure to call on Cynthia Kaunda. Cynthia Kaunda from Zambia. She's actually an accountant by profession. Hear me, hear clearly. She's an accountant by profession. She works for the National Science and Technology Council in Zambia. But guess what? She's something else. She's also director of Fruitful Beverages and AgriFlex Limited, whose principal activities is the production of fruit juices and farming, respectively. So even though she's an accountant by profession, she works for the government. She also runs a company around agriculture. So Cynthia, could you just give us very briefly your story? Because I believe there must have been a day where you woke up in the morning and said, well, I want to go into this thing. How did that happen? I mean, is it possible young people can actually start this process? Your story, please. Thank you, Cynthia.
Hello, Akan. Thank you, everyone. So privileged to have this opportunity to speak to everyone. I don't take it for granted. I'm not the best, but I can share my story. The idea was we're running a family business with my husband, and we recognized that there was a lot of a few locally produced juices in the market. So most of the juices that we're having were imported, and we thought, why should we always just have locally produced products? So we ventured into a juice making company, and that's the one we call it Fruitful Beverages. At the moment, we're using pulp concentrates to make the juice, but again, we noticed that we have a lot of pineapple in the northwestern part of Zambia, which sometimes goes to waste. And in the rain season, our harvest time is mango, and almost every yard, every household has a mango tree. So even as we fail to finish the mangoes on our yard, we have to call the other locals to come and get some mangoes from us. So we thought we can't let these things go to waste. So our ultimate goal is to turn this mango, to turn this pineapple, oranges into pulp and make juices out of it.
Interesting.
So this is our main goal, but on this one, it's something that's in the pipeline because it will need some investments in terms of equipment and all, but this is our end goal to it. We put up our factory, the outskirts of Lusaka, about 35 kilometers out of Lusaka in a rural settlement.
Okay.
So that's where we are. And when we got there, we started our juice production, but it's on a 5-acre land. So we said, well, let's utilize the other remaining land. So we ventured into agriculture as well. So we're doing both crop and livestock.
Okay.
So for the livestock, we're rearing broiler chickens. And for our main crops that we're growing is cabbages, tomatoes, and green maize. I can go on to say why we picked on green maize instead of selling it for minimum. Okay. Yes, but anyway, due to time, I'll just mention that. Yeah, so, and we picked on these because they are crops that are daily consumed, like especially here in Zambia.
Okay.
Yeah, they are crops that are daily consumed, so that's why we identified them. And we ventured into broilers, and we noticed that even for the crop, the price is determined by the demand. So if today you all take a lot of chickens to the market, the price drops. If I'm the only one who takes, the price is good. So we said, let's not leave it there. So we ventured into a food processing plant.
Okay.
Yes, so we are doing a food processing plant where we're processing meat, we're processing cattle, goats, and chickens. Our ultimate goal is to get not just we don't have cattle, we don't have goats. So our ultimate goal is to get the goats from our locals because probably they're being ripped off. So we make it into processed meat and then sell it maybe to the bigger supermarkets and no. Yeah, so being in a rural area, we identified that we can become a hub. Yes, a processing hub for the rural farmers, for their produce, for their tomatoes, because sometimes a lot of tomatoes, we've wasted tomato before because it can't sell because it's flooded on the market.
That's right.
So that's why we had the idea of coming up with a processing plant so that we can process tomato maybe into tomato paste, tomato sauce, and then we process the chicken so that it can be sold also. So this is how. So
Cynthia,
yes.
As you were talking, there's a gentleman, Douglas Emmanuel, says that your story is planting ideas in his head. I can almost see smoke coming out. But let me ask you though. You know how it is where, so did you have to have like a bucket of money, like a bag of money to start? Because it sounds like you woke up in the morning and as you're walking down the street, you saw every household had a mango tree. And you're like, how can I be importing mango juice from somewhere when I can just put something together and squeeze this, package it? So my question is, did you have a bucket of money to start the process? How did you start?
We started slowly, and we still were not yet there, very small, with little capital, and we've been growing our business slowly, and we are still not yet there. We still need more money.
You're still growing, obviously. So you make some little money, put it back in the business and grow it. Make some little money.
Sometimes you even make, like on the farming, you make losses, so you need some more money to venture into it again. Yeah, so we didn't have like a...
Have you ever had a time where you produce something and you haven't sold it? Do you always sell what you produce?
The beauty is, there are times we've sold, few times, but the beauty about the crop is, yes, you can sell it all the time.
Oh, I see.
But the problem is the price, because it's the market that demands the price. So if you've got so much, you might sell it even at a lower price than your even production cost. So that's what is the challenge. So this is what we want to help the rural farmer with. The rural farmer can't be manipulated. They spend a lot of money to produce it, and they have to sell because they have to sell. At least if we are saying let's process it for them. They will have at least a price that will not make them make losses, because sometimes they make losses, sometimes they just break even.
Yes.
Very difficult to make profits.
Yeah.
Because if you all take to the market on the same day, the price will drop.
So while you were talking, Cynthia, you know I'm studying everything as it goes. And this session is not only a webinar, it's if you are opening your eyes and you're in this group, if I were you, I'll be watching out for comments on the group. There are farmers, there are funders, there are networking agents, there are potential partners on the group. As you were talking, look at the chat session. A gentleman, Nicholas Dreger, says he would like to link you to a partner in South Africa. Since you're in Zambia.
Okay, that's nice.
So you better tell Nicola, send him a private message right away and tell him, Nicola, let's have a chat, because it's about connection.
Yes,
now, on this call, there is a lady called Rita Otu. Now, Rita is like Cynthia. Rita runs a farm in Nigeria. So, Rita, are you on the call, please? Can we unmute Rita?
Yes, I am. Beautiful. Good afternoon, everyone.
Rita, so in just like your story is very fascinating. Can you give us an idea? Because I just following up from what Cynthia said about how did you begin what you now do? You are CEO of a farm, an enterprise in Nigeria. Now, Cynthia is in Zambia. And I think as a matter of fact, both of you should probably connect. But give us a sense as to how did you start? Well, what was the issue about? Yeah, go on, please.
Okay, so after my master's at the Manchester University, where I met you, I came back to Nigeria, and I realized that there's a lot of malnutrition and there's so many children, hungry children on the streets. Okay. So that was what really activated me to start a business in farming, though my first degree is on agriculture and extension. So I started a farm, and not just a farm. I grow biofortified crops because I had to partner with Harvest Plus Nigeria. We're the first to start dissemination of biofortified stems and seeds in Nigeria. The biofortified crops, the beauty of it is, because cassava is a staple diet here in Nigeria. Everybody eats gari, and the gari that we consume is just the white varieties that has nothing to add in our body. So the biofortified crops has vitamins and minerals in it. So we had to change the narrative and also encourage young farmers, men, women, to grow biofortified crops. And it's been very good. The biofortified crops is good, especially for people who are diabetic. It also good for pregnant mothers and also good for children. So right now that we have the feed program in Nigeria, we give out the cassava where children can feed on it, and then farmers and all of that. And also because the last speaker spoke on cassava mosaic, with the biofortified stems, if you grow the cassava, you won't really have the problem of pests and diseases.
Okay. Interesting.
That's it. So far, so good. For the past 5 years, the agri business is really good and flourishing. So
I'm happy to hear that. I think I feel like being a farmer. So you encourage.
Yeah, that's why you see.
You encourage young people to think about it, as against finishing university and sitting down home and just complaining and complaining. Is there a little farmland? Is that something you can do just to get on it? Because everybody has to eat. I mean, I read your story, and I know you've won several international awards because of how much work you do. But I think there's also this dimension around the social value of what you do. So, which is why you are getting partnerships to make what you do actually happen. Thank you very much for that call. I know it was impromptu, but I thought it's important for people to hear case studies that actually farming can be a fruitful venture amidst all the challenges. Now, we are wrapping this up. Thank you so much, Rita. Thank you so much, Cynthia. We are wrapping this up now, but I can't wrap it up without leaving everybody some specific action points. This webinar shouldn't end here. There has to be engagement. It's continuous. So the first action point is this. So if you look at the chat section, follow me, look at the chat section. I have left, 1 minute. I have left a message, okay, which is, so currently I'm the Africa Strategy Advisor of Lancaster University. And I also support the partnership for this current project sponsoring this. So if you've heard anything interesting and you're thinking about potential partnerships to get to know how to engage with what we do. So I've left my email on the chat section, but importantly, I've also left the social media handles of the project. So right now, if you can pick up your phone and just go on Twitter and just follow us on Twitter, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Facebook, the Recirculators, GCRF. It's a really good way of you following up on the different opportunities, sponsorships, fellowships, activities, webinars, partnership leverages to grow the connection. So everyone do that. Yeah. So I've left the messages on the chat section. So note it down. I've also left my email there in case you want to contact us for international partnerships on the project. Okay. And try and follow as we go. And the next thing I want to do is action point 2. And that is, currently there is an incredible women innovators network on the project called Winners. Okay. So I'm going to leave you a second link, action point 2. So if you're a woman on the call and you want to join the Women Innovation Network on the project, it's a special network where you can interact with international women doing incredible things around innovation. So the second action point, I've left you a link. There is a blog, a simple blog written by a lady on the project. Read the blog, okay, and leave a message. When you read the blog, it's an opportunity to leave a message that you want to join the network. Else, you can leave me your email address or send me an email. I've left you my email on the chat. That's action point 2. Okay? Are you following me? I'll give you some more time to do that. There are 2 more action points and we'll wrap it up. 2 more action points. Action point 1 is I've left you the social media handles on the project. I've left you my name and email. You can send me an email if you're interested in following up for partnerships or to know more about the project, or follow social media handles to know what we are doing. There are many opportunities in this project. Action point 2, I've left you a blog written by a lady on the project that also helps you to join the Women Innovations Network on the back of the project. Okay? Now, action point 3, can the gentleman leave the feedback link on the chat section? Paul, please. So action point 3, you now see that we're leaving you a simple link. It's a feedback link. Now, this link is very important. So I like everybody. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Paul. So there's a survey link that has been left now on the chat section. So everybody copy that link and save it, or copy it. It's a link to a very simple questionnaire, but the link will request you to include your name, to put your name as you will want it to appear on your certificate. Exactly. So at the end of this webinar, you would all receive a certificate of participation from Lancaster University Recirculate project. But in order for us to know who you are, click that link, the survey link, and leave your name and fill the questionnaire very quickly. It should take about 3-5 minutes. That's all. And then you will receive your certificate of participation at the end of the webinar, once you've filled your name and a little feedback. All feedback are welcome, and please be honest. We want to know so we can actually be better at this. There are a lot more webinars to happen after this. So be honest in your feedback, but don't forget to leave your name, because it forms a basis for you to get certificate of participation, your name and your email. Now, the final activity, which you might be happy to know, is we've spoken a lot today about different challenges, but also opportunities and the leverage around partnerships. So to wrap it up, I want to call on the team. So the survey link has been put on the chat again, to play you a very short 5-minute video that talks about what the project is about, the importance of partnerships, of innovation, to increase whatever it is you do. So it's a story about Lancaster University and the different African partners. It's called Towards Better Futures. So gentlemen, if you can play the short video so everybody can watch, and that will be the end of the webinar. Over 90 million tons of waste is generated in Africa per year and is estimated to reach 160 million tons within 5 years. Over 600 million Africans will have access to electricity. Over 200 million people experience hunger and are chronically undernourished. Over 100 people die every hour, and over 100,000 children die every year due to poor water. In an era where global concerns about sustainability are peaking, a global sustainability network has never been so crucial. Sustainable development in Africa is seeing a range of challenges which impacts on the environment, economic prosperity, the health and well-being of Africans. These challenges, however, provide huge opportunities to facilitate the co-design, co-development and co-delivery of sustainable initiatives and solutions which directly address the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This can be achieved through collaboration, the development of strategic partnerships, and growing a global network. The Center for Global Innovation, based at Lancaster University, is at the heart of this expanding network focused on real transformational change.
Eco-innovation needs to be community-driven if we're to develop inclusive solutions where people and planet prosper. Collaboration is the guiding principle for us at the Centre for Global Eco-Innovation. Connection drives innovation, and forging links between industry, government, citizens and researcher is absolutely essential to what we do at the Centre. Only by working together in equitable partnerships can we break down the barriers to building a better future.
Universities across Africa, working with businesses, will be key drivers of eco-innovation. This is why the Center for Global Eco-Innovation was established at the University of Benin in partnership with Lancaster University. Since then, we have focused on the conversion of waste to energy through a £7 million recycling and £800,000 actual translation project funded by the UK government's Global Challenge Research Fund.
1.3 billion people live in Africa, and this will nearly double by 2050. There's a lot of mouths to feed. If we it means that we need community-based innovative technology and collaborative research that addresses our food challenges in practical ways. This is our mandate at the African Innovation Institute. However, to ensure progressive outcomes, the role of government cannot be overemphasized.
Government can implement policies that limit the causes of climate change, but we need the right strategies to support those policies. That means new ways of generating and using energy, managing water, and dealing with waste. Commercial companies, including small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, and specifically innovation-driven enterprises, IDEs, will be key players in delivering new eco-innovative products, services, and technologies.
Resource-based economies are common throughout Africa. In the copper belt mining sector here in Zambia, there is a huge need for innovative capacity building to ensure inclusive, resilient, and sustainable low-carbon recovery and economic growth.
The university, working in partnership with government, businesses, and civil society, we are able to create innovation ecosystems. Research is able to move beyond the publication of papers as output and into the creation of impact in society. Our students play a vital role.
The Centre for Global Eco-Innovation has supported companies through graduate and postgraduate research projects lasting for 3 years, driving forward eco-innovative products and services through industry links.
I believe that partnership is everything. The maintenance of international collaborations and mutually beneficial relationships through co-design and co-delivery binds our networks together. Over the last 10 years, we've established good working relationships with our African partners. From these collaborations, the Recirculate and Actuate projects have emerged through funding by the UK government's Global Challenges Research Fund. These projects are incredibly rewarding and genuinely transformational. Lancaster's eco-innovative vision is making real progress and impact internationally.
The challenge is huge, but the opportunities are clear. The road is long, but the journey has begun. This isn't about incremental change. We should transform the ways that government, academia, industry, society work together. By directly addressing the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we aim to address societal, psychological, environmental, and economic challenges affecting Africa. We should focus our attention on the art of collaboration. Our network continues to expand. The impact is growing. Whatever your area of expertise, we can build a better future for everyone by working together. Join us.
Thank you very, very much. It shows you that we have to work together. It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for a huge participation, for waiting for us, and apologies for the mix-ups and for the connection issues here and there. And once you fill the feedback and survey link with your details and your email and your name, you would receive certificate of participation. And everybody who has filled that would also receive a link to the whole webinar. So we're going to have, because this is being recorded, you will receive a link to the whole webinar in your email. So make sure you don't forget to fill the survey link so we can have access to your details to send you certificate of participation alongside the link to the webinar. On that note, we are done. Thank you so much for an amazing time, and thanks so much for being patient with us. And on that note, have a lovely week and a great weekend. God bless you, everybody. Thanks to everybody. Yeah.